Yo, what's good YouTube? It is your host HG Samurai here, and welcome to the channel. Today I'm here to bring you guys another part 2. What if Asta was Fujitora's reincarnation? Part 5. Thank you all so much for tuning into this part of the What If, and yeah, let's get into it. But before we do, guys, I'm just going to start off the warning early now in these videos, mostly due to the fact that, I understand it gets pretty exhausting, so if you guys don't know the warning, I'm going to let you know right now. Pretty much before you guys enter the video, there will be background noises. Also, there will be some stuttering because your boy hears stutters often. I'll try to edit as much as I can, but sometimes small little titsy bits of it will be stuck in the video. So due to that, I want to warn you guys to please just ignore it and focus more on the video. Trust me, that'll make it much better. If you guys understand that, thank you very much. And also comment down below any what ifs that you guys are thinking of, as you guys give me some great ideas. I might look at them, or I might not like them. Just recommend me stuff, Just type down below anything you're feeling or anything. I like reading your guys' comments. It feels amazing and everything. And it really shows all your guys' support. And if you guys understand all that, thank you all so much. And yeah, why don't we just get started with this video? So with that being said, let's get started.
You're never gonna make it, you're not good enough. There's a million other people with the same stuff. You really think you're different? Man, you must be kidding. Think you're gonna hit it, but you just don't get it. It's impossible, it's not probable, you're irresponsible. Too many obstacles, you gotta stop it, yo. You gotta take it slow, you can't be a pro. Don't waste your time no more. Who the fuck are you to tell me what to do?
Alright guys, let's get started with this what if. Hopefully you guys do enjoy. And either way, let's begin. So we now kick off this what if with the very next day, as we're now entering the end of part 4. So after a day spending with Rebecca, Asta had now decided that it was time for him to visit Rebecca and her siblings, as Rebecca had invited him over to hang out with her and her siblings. So with that, Asta, using the power of his Zushi no Mi, is able to make himself practically weightless and is able to force himself over there in a matter of seconds. However, while doing so, he was unaware of the fact that Noelle had actually sneakily asked Finral to teleport her to the area where Asta and Rebecca are going to be at, because she wants to spy on him to make sure that Asta, or better yet, Rebecca, doesn't do anything to him. And at that same time, we also see Ghosh, as he was also on the way over there to spend time with his sister. As you already know, Ghosh has a problem with his sister and everything, Yeah, it's very unhealthy. But moving on. As Asta would eventually arrive over there, he would meet Rebecca and her siblings, and he begins to spend time with them. He begins playing around with them, and while doing so, he also ends up encountering Marie, who after seeing them would soon join them in the fun. As we eventually now turn to when Ghosh actually arrives at the scene, as he had bought Marie multiple gifts to spend time with her. This is when he then sees what was happening. He sees Asta currently playing around with the children, as Asta, using the power of the Zushi no Mi, is able to make them practically weightless and is currently juggling them around. As many of the kids were having fun, Marie will also be one of them, as she'll be tossed up higher and higher in the air. And Ghosh, seeing this, just snapped. He instantly attacked Asta in front of Rebecca and her siblings. He doesn't even care the fact that he could possibly end up injuring one of the kids. And Asta, seeing this, was not going to allow that, as quicker than any of the kids can react, Asta would disappear and appear behind Ghosh and knock him out in a chop. So at that point, Ghosh gets knocked out unconscious as he lays there on the ground, like foaming at the mouth, while Asta ends up catching all the kids right before they hit the ground. Sure, they're weightless, but still, it's better to be safe than sorry. Alright, that's enough fun for today. How will we get something to eat? Asta would ask. Now, at that point, all the kids would agree, until suddenly this is when the sister that was nearby would then walk over to Asta, thanking him for what he did to Ghosh, and while doing so, she would also ask Marie to come along with her, as it was time for her bedtime. So with that, Marie ends up leaving, saying goodbye to Asta, with Asta waving goodbye to her, and with that, Rebecca and Asta, as well as her siblings, end up going to go eat something. And at that point, they also leaving Ghosh outside, because he was going to be a nuisance anyway. Now at that time, as Asta was about to head out with Rebecca's siblings though, he also ended up catching sight of Noelle. He was able to sense her presence, as she wasn't really that far away, so with that, he ends up walking over to her and just yanks her out of her hiding place. Come on, I'm not going to let you do what you did last time, alright? Come on. Let's go get something to eat. Now at that point, Noelle was embarrassed as she had been caught so easily, but of course goes, and as she does, her and Rebecca instantly has a rivalry. As we end up moving forward, Asta would spend most of his time with Rebecca's siblings as he begins to tell them tales from his old life, or just explaining them as if they were fairy tales, even though they actually happened. And while doing so, in the midst of that, Rebecca and Noelle would fight for Asta's attention. Well, not like physically fighting, but they would try doing subtle acts. For example, Noelle like making clumsy mistakes, or Rebecca showing Asta amazing cooking skills. And Asta was of course impressed and everything, and he knows what was happening but decided not to butt in. After all, he may be the reincarnation of Fujitora, but even he was not stupid enough to get between two women's rivalry, okay? As we do a time skip, nightfall would eventually come, with Asta realizing it and realizing that it was time for him to go. However, this is when he would then be invited by Rebecca to stay the night, as she would also invite Noelle, although she was very reluctant about it. So with that, Noelle and Asta would stay at the night at Rebecca's place. So as we now turn to when it's the dead of night, as Asta would casually be laying down, this is when he then senses something was off. As this is when we would then see him actually end up teleporting out of Rebecca's place without her or anyone else realizing it. In the dead of night, we will see two individuals, this being Nij and Boro, as they currently had come to the village to take away their children. As Boro was walking, he would then tell Nij to activate the spell quickly. Come on, we don't got enough time. She's waiting for it. At this, Nij would nod his head as he was actually very excited for the prospect of new friends. However, just as he was about to activate his spell, this is when suddenly he actually ends up getting knocked out in an instant. Wait, what? At this, he ends up turning around to look who hit Nij, but this is when suddenly he ends up getting backhanded in the face by the back of a katana, as he ends up getting knocked unconscious as well. Great. At this, we will now move forward as we now turn to when both of them end up waking up. Baro and Nij would be tied up by a rope, as they are currently wondering what the heck was happening to them. However, as they do, they will then feel a ginormous weight on their shoulders, as they end up turning around slightly to see it. Standing in front of them will be Asta, as currently right now he'll be holding the katana, pointing directly at them. Now then, gentlemen, I'd like to explain what are you guys doing here at this lovely time. At this, both of them will be sweating a little bit as Barbie tries to, talk his way out of it, but Asta wasn't playing no games. As the more times he wasn't answering Asta's questions, this is when the weight on his shoulders would increase even further, to the point where he felt like he was carrying a mountain. Okay, I'll answer, he would say. As this is when Baro would then explain about the entire situation. Pretty much how he was ordered for this, and how he was trying to get paid and everything, and how Nij was supposed to help him with that as well. So after interrogating all of this, Asta ends up knocking the two of them out again, and as he does, he sighs as he ends up calling out for Noelle and Gauche. As we now see, getting out of her hiding place, we will see Noelle as she had just arrived on the scene, as after a while she actually had walked into Asta's room to pretty much try to check that Rebecca wasn't with him or anything, but when she found out that he wasn't there, she decided to investigate. And lo and behold, she ended up sensing a few magical powers currently at loose, so she ends up heading to the direction, and as she does, she saw both Baro and Nij currently being tied up by Asta and being interrogated. She sat there watching for a while, but Asta easily was able to sense her, so he instantly just called her out. And as for Ghost, she already knew that he was hiding in the other tree, waiting to attack Asta for spending time with his Marie. So as Ghost ends up exiting out and shooting out a light beam, Asta ends up reflecting the attack and just appears in front of Ghost with killing intent. Now is not the time, alright? Asta would say as he had a tick mark on his head, actually freezing Ghost in place as he tries to argue with Asta for spending time with his Marie, but Asta told him once again that now was not the time. So at this point, now that Noelle and Ghost were here, Asta would explain to them the situation, and pretty much explain about what was happening with Nij and Baro. After being informed about everything that they were planning to do, Asta had to once again stop Ghost, as Ghost was trying to kill them, as he expected that Marie was one of their targets, and he was not going to let that slide. But after a while, Asta just knocks him out again, as after that, he ends up turning his attention to Noelle, telling her to stay here and watch over the village just in case something happens. As with that, Asta ends up forcing both Baro and Nij to wake up, as he forces them to take him to the location where they were planning to extract the mana from the kids. So with no choice, Baro and Nij will end up taking Asta to the direction, and while doing so, Noelle will watch all this in suspense as she was afraid for Asta's safety. So with that, she decides to make a certain call to get reinforcements to arrive. As soon, we now turn to when Asta arrives at the location, and as he does, he ends up seeing the magic draining machine. As Baro begins to explain about how they were planning to use it and everything, Asta didn't need any more of an explanation. Adding gravity, using the Zushi no Mi, he ends up pulling a ginormous force of gravity onto his sword. As this one suddenly, he ends up swinging just one casual swing towards it, destroying the machine in an instant. Why? Baro would say, as Asta would then look towards him. Because something this disgusting and filthy shouldn't exist. Scum. At this, Baro would feel fear once again, as him and Nij would then once again get knocked out, as Asta was already tired with dealing with them. And after that, Asta decided that he was going to turn in Baro and Nij, as with this, he was going to also have to give a detailed report about what was happening, or at least what was about to happen. However, just as he says this, Asta would then begin to pick up on something. as if the very pressure and the sense of the room just changed, as he felt this tension. And as he does, Asta would then suddenly have to deflect a light blade, as we see a dark portal open up with Licht end up appearing. "So it's you again, human," Licht would say, as Asta would stare down at the man holding his katana out, as just like that, Asta begins to generate a ginormous amount of pressure once again, as Asta had already knew that combat at this point was already unavoidable. As with that, the two of them would then casually stare at each other with this tension in the air, as this was something both of them would want to dive at each other, as Licht would form a light blade with Asta slashing down with his katana, as both attacks would then collide. At this, generous shockwave ends up getting sent out, as Licht will be pushed back in an instant, as the force from Asta's attack was too strong. This is of course because of the fact that Asta was way stronger than Licht physically, and also because of the power of the Zushi no Mi. As Licht would be there getting sent flying, he would then suddenly end up recovering, as he summons out multiple light blades from the sky and let them rain upon Asta. Now seeing this, Asta, using the power of his katana, begins to slice up all of the magic blades, and as he does, he also ends up deflecting one of them, sending them flying towards Licht, who ends up actually getting a small little cut on his cheek. "Damn human, you dare injure me?" Licht would say, but as he does, this is when Asta would then channel a ginormous amount of anti-magic. The Grimoire's pages will be flipping up, as Licht staring at it would then realize what it is. "You have that grimoire? You don't deserve it," Licht would say, but Asta didn't care, as generating a generous amount of anti-magic, he then shoots out an anti-magic slash. And as he does, Licht would have no choice but to dodge out of the way. However, as he does, the anti-magic slash actually ends up nicking him a little bit, as it actually had cut a little bit of his shoulder. So as Licht ends up, moving out the way, he would then feel his magic begin to drain. What's going on? At this, he ends up looking down, and as he does, he sees the dark markings on his shoulder. As he's trying to get rid of it, he will feel it draining his magic, or weakening it. He resorts to this trickery? Damn human. At this, he would tries to attack Asta once again, but Asta was able to see it. The light blades, they were getting slower. So slow that Asta didn't even have to react fast enough. All he could do was legit casually dodge out of the way without any issues. As Licht, seeing Asta avoiding his attack so casually, would then realize that he was in danger. "Dang, I need to get rid of this mark," he would say as he looks down at the anti-magic slash. And as he does, this one suddenly he would then feel another slash approaching him. As he prepares to dodge out of the way of the other one, though, this one suddenly he then feels it. "Wait, what?" At this, as he tries to dodge the slash, as the slash was actually really close to him, this is when he feels himself actually get dragged into it. And as he does, he would have to hold in the cry of pain, as he feels legit the slash was like pulling him in, like a gravitational force was pulling him into the slash, as he ends up getting a ginormous slash mark on his shoulder. "What?" he would shout, as now he had another anti-magic slash mark, making his magic even more weaker. As Asta will be staring at him with a smirk, Licht will be so confused at this very moment. Although both slashes had caught Licht off guard, this one especially caught him off guard. The other one, Licht actually was able to dodge it. It was just the fact that he was narrow-minded and didn't actually fully sense it coming until he got a little bit too close. But this one was different. It was very far away from Licht, so he obviously had saw it coming and had decided to dodge. However, it seems as if some unknown force had dragged him into the slash, purposely putting him there to take the hit. He didn't know exactly what it was, but Asta knew. During the time of his training, as soon as he got the katana, he actually been studying this technique, a way to draw his enemy close in using the power of his Zushi no Mi. He also combined it with his anti-magic, as during this time he was also training with it as well, forming new techniques, forming different ways of using it, as well as also trying to come into contact with the energy that he felt inside of it. He has not made that many progress yet, unfortunately, but he's getting there. However, another thing was the fact that this technique was so powerful, mostly due to the fact that it's unavoidable. He uses the power of the Zushi no Mi to drag enemies into the attack. So even if you're trying to run away, if you're close enough, or at least in its range, it will drag you in. So if you were to dodge to the side, that thing would drag you in back to the front so that you take the hits. That's what makes the technique so dangerous. So as now Licht had 2 anti-magic slash marks, his magic was getting drained even faster, and it was weakening him even further. So as Licht was now cursing Asta over and over again, he would try forming another light blade, but as he does, this time it wasn't as smooth as before. Instead of being ginormous, it gets smaller, and another thing was the fact that it could barely retain its shape. It no longer looked like a sword. In fact, it just looked like an arrow now. So as Licht would stare down at Asta, he would try to attack it with this blade, but Asta would just cut it up in an instant. And as he does, Licht was already in range as Asta would turn towards him. Face the facts. You lost. As Licht couldn't do anything, he would then get multiple slash marks all around as Asta would swing the katana very fiercely. As by the time the attack was done, Licht would have multiple slash marks all around and he would be sent flying, barreling into a wall as he was currently bleeding. Asta would be there staring down at Licht as he would scoff at the man he actually thought was a challenge. As Asta would do this, he also has to hold in a wince as he ends up looking down at his arm and as he realizes that the techniques that he was pulling off to land these blows were quite painful on his muscles. As he tries to relax his muscles a little bit so that way they don't get too damaged, this is when suddenly he has to dodge another attack, another light blade, but this time it wasn't from Licht. At this, Asta would of course dodge out of the way, and as he does, he sees it. 3 individuals end up arriving through a portal similar to Licht's, as this one would be Raya, Fauna, and Veto. As the 3 strongest members of the Eye of the Midnight Sun had just arrived and are currently now ready to face off against Asta. All 3 of them would arrive as they end up looking at Licht and would be surprised by how damaged he was. Now Licht, even though it was up against all 3 of them, Licht would not stand a chance, but Licht was still strong in his own right, and the fact that he was able to beat Licht really showed this kid's power. But that did not make them any less furious, as each one of them would then turn their anger onto Asta. Even Raya, who doesn't really show emotion, you also could sense a spike in his tone. As they will all begin to curse at Asta, pretty much shouting that this would be the end for him, Asta would just sigh in response to that, as he ends up getting into combat mode once again. As he ends up releasing this pressure, pretty much daring them to approach him, Veta will be the first one. He ends up forming a generous beast claw at Asta, throwing the attack at him, and Asta, to his surprise, would just tank the hit. He doesn't move at all as he easily just takes it, as a ginormous force will actually send Asta cratering into the ground. Are you kidding me? And this human was powerful enough to take on Licht? Veta would say, as he actually thought the attack had just finished off Asta. However, to his surprise, as the smoke would clear, he would see it. Asta had blocked the attack. And to make it even more shocking was the fact that Asta currently was grabbing onto Veto's arm. And as he does, Veto would try to release his grip from Asta. However, to his surprise, he can't budge his arm at all. What? At this, Asta would be staring down at Veto with cold eyes, as this is when Veto would then feel it. His arm, or more precisely the bones in his arms, were being broken by the pressure and the grip of Asta's hand. Let go, human! Veto would be screaming out, but Asta didn't let go. At this, the pressure became so powerful as this is when Asta would then fully do it. As he ends up using his full force, as well as the Zushi no Mi, he ends up breaking Veto's arm. As the bones will be crumbled up and crunched, everyone could hear it as Veto would scream out in pain before throwing another attack at Asta to get away from him. But Asta, to his surprise, would avoid the attack, and using Veto's broken arms, he ends up tossing Veto aside, legit like a softball throw. As Veto would be thrown aside like he was nothing, Raya and Fauna would be there watching in shock, as Veto was physically the strongest members of the Eye of the Midnight Sun. So the fact that Asta was able to break his arm with ease is just saying something. However, Fauna was not deterred at all. She would then throw out a ginormous stream of flames using Salamander. And Asta, seeing this, would instantly deflect it with his katana. You'll pay for what you did to them, she would say. Asta didn't care at all, as using the power of the Roku Shiki, he ends up avoiding out of most of her attacks, and as he does, he ends up appearing in front of her with his katana prepared. However, right before he could actually land an attack on her, this is when a portal would then open up, swallowing Asta whole, as he ends up appearing in front of Raya. As Raya would see Asta appear in front of him, he ends up smirking as he tells Asta to have a nice trip. At this, Asta would then suddenly feel an attack at his back, as right as he turns around, he has no choice but to use his katana, as well as using all his force to block a hit from Veto, as the man was able to get up from the attack and had to swing with his good hand a beast claw. However, this time, since Asta wasn't prepared, he would actually be sent flying a couple of feet away from them. And as he does, another thing would end up happening would be, as Asta would actually, finally was able to get back his balance, he would actually have a ginormous rain of light blades fall upon him. Now, Asta, seeing this, would instantly begin to spin around at rapid speeds. Using the power of anti-magic, as Asta has gotten better control over it thanks to his training, he ends up making a ginormous anti-magic like miniature like whirlwind, as he ends up deflecting all the magical blades and destroying them all at once. And as he does, Asta would then once again have to dodge out of the way of a ginormous stream of flames, as now the all three members were now jumping Asta. Veto, although he was incredibly injured, would be attacking him ruthlessly. Raya would end up actually manipulating the fight, as he would open portals out of nowhere since he copied the magic of Voltos. So due to this, he was able to open portals like almost anywhere in the entire battlefield, preventing Asta from landing any clean hits on them. And finally, there was Fauna, who continued using the same salamander attack, as he would continue throwing ginormous flamethrowers at Asta, with Asta having no choice but to dodge out of the way. It would be tireless for Asta, considering the fact that he couldn't even rest for a few seconds, as they were relentless with the attacks. However, Asta wouldn't give up, as he ends up pushing his body over the limit. He didn't care what was going to happen. He was going to give it all he got. So as Asta dodges out of the way of all these attacks, this is when finally Veto, Fauna, and Raya will finally land a full actual blow on Asta. As Asta, instead of dodging out of the way of a stream of flames from Fauna, actually just takes it. As Asta would actually switch his stance slightly, not that they realized. At this, Veto will also appear in front of Asta, landing a beast claw on him, pushing Asta back a couple of feet. And finally, this is when Raya will then finish it up, as he sends out a generous rain of light spears towards Asta, as each one of them would actually hit him at once. Now, as the smoke would then clear from their attacks, we would see Asta, and his condition was not looking too good. He had multiple cut marks all around. He was burned. He had a ginormous bruise on his right arm, and after all of that, Asta looked like he just had like a field day. Like, this man's been beaten up. Now at this point, they would think that they had won, as they began to tell Asta this was going to be the end for him, that this was payback for what he did to Licht. However, Asta says nothing, as this is when suddenly a pressure would then set in. Now this time, instead of the old pressure that Asta exerted, this one seemed more lethal. Like, it legit felt as if they even were to take one step forward, they will legit like be cutting up, destroyed, like they will be erased, as every single one of them couldn't even move thanks to the amount of terror they were feeling. At this, Asta then look at them, laughing in their faces. You know, I have to admit, I didn't get exactly the challenge I wanted from your leader, but you all have surpassed my expectations, and for that, you have my gratitude. Now, I can go all out without any repercussions. As Asta would say this is when suddenly Asta would then begin to radiate with a lot of energy himself, as the ground itself couldn't even stand underneath this pressure. Asta was cratering and further into the ground as he begins to release it, while the others at this point have now collapsed to the ground themselves. They are unable to move. As they try to get up, gravity itself would be against them, as it prevents them from even moving an inch. As they can do nothing more but stand there, this is when they feel it. Their instincts would be screaming at them to run away, as they would feel a ginormous amount of heat approach them. And as they do, they're only able to literally look up slightly, and that's when they regret it. Raining from above, they will see a ginormous meteor was collapsing down on the area. Now, this meteor was not just a small one, it was ginormous, as they will see approach them as we now turn to the village itself. At the village, we will actually end up seeing as many people have now exited out, as they have been awoken up thanks to the amount of like pressure and earthquakes that we're getting from the fight. Like, the fight itself was legit causing like miniature earthquakes to appear in the village, so of course they would be waken up by it. And as they do, they actually see this ginormous rock that was falling from the sky, as they were all amazed by it. As to them it looked beautiful, but for the Midnight Sun members, nah, that looked like death itself was approaching them. As the members will be there, they will try their hardest to move, forcing their magic to push themselves up, to the point where they even tried to rely on their third eye to see if maybe they could like gather up enough strength to move out of the way, but it was too late. As after this, Asta will end up vanishing from the area right before the meteor hit, as his final words will loom over them, as he tells fate to take its course. As the members of the Midnight Sun can do nothing, they will all scream out, including Fauna herself, as she herself couldn't believe she was actually feeling fear, as this is when they will all be hit by the meteor. The meteor will be so powerful, it literally shakes the entire mountain, it shakes the entire village as well, as this was the biggest amount of earthquakes that they actually ever gotten. As they'll feel it for like a good few minutes, eventually those minutes would pass, as finally things begin to settle down. As they look up, the entire mountain was practically destroyed. There was barely anything left of it. Legit, the very top of it was gone. It was destroyed, and all they saw was a ginormous rock that was currently sitting there on top of it. They'll be amazed about what they had just seen, while Noelle, who had saw it all, couldn't do nothing more but already understand who did it. She didn't know how or why she had this faith, but she knew that this could only be the doing of Asta. As we now turn to our protagonist's points of view, we'll see Asta as he ends up looking down at the destruction he had just caused, and as he does, he can't help but feel a tiny bit of remorse. The reason for this one is that he wished that he understood exactly why did they go through this. Why did they do all this? Why did they force him to do this? Alright? Now, sure, Asta understands that, like he beat up the leader and everything, but he wants to understand what was the reason for all of this? What was the reason for forming the organization? What was the reason for attacking the Clover Kingdom? What was the reason of stealing these kids' magic? Asta didn't understand. And also, if you guys also don't know, Nij and Baro, they're still next to Asta, as in that nick of moment, Asta also saved them as well, as they're still going to be taken to interrogate. As Asta will stare down at the destruction he caused, this one suddenly he ends up lifting up, the ginormous rock, using the power of the Zushi no Mi. And as he does, as Asta ends up lifting it, he ends up seeing the members of the Eye of the Midnight Sun, and as he does, he would see that every single one of them were badly injured. They were bloody, they couldn't move, and overall they were all unconscious. As Asta would stare down at them, he can't do nothing more but shake his head, wishing that things could have gone different. As Asta would soon end up heading down there himself, he ends up checking out their pulses, and as he does, he ends up seeing that 2 of them had died. These 2 being Veto and Raya, as it seems as if both of them had taken upon themselves to take in the blunt of the hit for their comrades. Now, Asta was actually very impressed by this, considering the fact that, number 1, he made it to where they couldn't move at all, yet some way, somehow, they were able to protect their friends from the blunt of the hit. Another thing was the fact that, just the fact that they were legit, like they're willing to sacrifice themselves for their comrades. Now, even though these guys are definitely like scum of the earth to Asta right now, he at least respects them for the fact that they actually do care about the others and look out for them. That, or they might have a ginormous blinding trust of loyalty towards them, and that might be like very unhealthy and everything, but either way, at least they're like willing to go for one another. Now, as Asta prepares to like take the other 2 in as an investigation though, this is when suddenly a portal then opens up as Finral, as well as the rest of the captains will also arrive. Took you long enough, Asta would say, as he ends up staring down at all of them. Now at this point, the captains will be confused about what was happening, as they will see this ginormous meteor just casually like flying above them. And another thing, they will see Asta just casually looking down at the bodies before him like it was nothing, while sending them a blank look. As they were over here watching all this, some of them walk forward as he then sighs. Alright kid, you're gonna owe us an explanation here, right? At that, Asta will nod his head before rolling his eyes, as this is when he then gives them a report, as we now do a time skip. So after giving the full report about the events, all things now considered, the Magic Knights are now taking them into custody. While Veto as well as Raya have been given a proper burial by Asta, as even though they were enemies, that does not mean that you can just practically just walk over their grave, as Asta hopes that in the next life they can have it better. As Asta will make the burial site for them, another thing ends up happening is the fact that by now Asta is like fully tired. Alright, this was the very first time, the entire time that he's been like reincarnated, that he's been able to release his full strength. And he realized now that he shouldn't from now on actually start getting used to it, as from now on there's no need to pull his punches unless truly required to. He needs to take things seriously. So with that, Asta now understands that and makes sure to use his full power more often. Just not summoning meteors out of nowhere. Also, another thing was the fact that, after this, of course, Asta ends up getting complimented by the villagers as they actually heard about Asta's heroic exploit and thank him for everything. Rebecca and Asta do Rebecca does give Asta the kiss on the cheek and everything because the boy deserves a win at least. He deserves at least a 1 win. Noelle ends up getting jealous, but he was able to move past this. And after this, it was finally time for the Black Bulls to go home. As with this, we can now move on from this arc. As we now change scenes to when currently right now, both Licht and Fauna were being transported. Due to the fact of how injured they were unable to move. So due to this, they were given a chance to get medical help. So with that, they were currently being medically examined as the doctors were trying to heal them as quickly as possible. Now, not the best recovery mage in the entire kingdom as he was currently busy, but just some random ones that are currently helping them as much as they can. However, that's when an event had occurred. Licht's eyes wouldn't suddenly fly open, as the recovery mage that was currently working on him did not notice it. But unfortunately, before the recovery mage can do anything else, it was already too late for him. Licht had already attacked him in an instant, injuring him quite badly. And he was not the only one. Fauna would also end up waking up, and she would actually be in the midst of screaming in terror about the event, while Licht, who was seeing himself surrounded by humans on all fronts, would instantly get pissed off. At this, multiple of the guards that were currently there guarding them would instantly try to jump in to prevent them from doing anything else and stop harming the medics and everything. But unfortunately, it was already too late. Now that they did not have any restrictions on them, they were free of their shackles and everything because they were getting medically treated. Licht had used his magical power to instantly attack the knights and actually put them down. And as he does, he ends up grabbing Fauna as he ends up disappearing in a glowing light, cursing and swearing vengeance on all of them before leaving the kingdom in a flash of light. No one was able to do anything, as later on it will be announced to all the Magic Knight captains sooner or later that the two members of the Adamantite Sun, one of them being the leader, had unfortunately escaped that following time during the midst of the recovery. Now, due to this news was very hard to all the captains, but this also made Julius begin to think that there might be a traitor among them. What do you guys think Licht's next plan is going to be now that he has lost two core members of the Adamantite Sun? Another thing is, what do you think he's going to do to counter Asta's abilities? And overall, what do you think Asta's interaction with Liebe is going to be? Well, guys, you're all going to have to find this out in the next part, as it's your host, HD Samurai, and he's signing off. Guys, thank you all so much for your support. Sorry I didn't post this yesterday. Me and my family once again went on a little trip. Luckily, it only lasted for one day, as we went off to go see my aunt, and I'm really glad to see her. Things have been going pretty well, and yeah, it was pretty awesome, guys. Thank y'all so much for tuning into this video once again. I really appreciate y'all. Type down below any thoughts or feelings on it, or what do you guys want to happen in the next part. And besides that, guys, is your host Seiji Samurai, and he's heading off. Peace, and have a lovely day.